All right, so we need to finish up our section on photosynthesis here. Quick comparison, moving into the last group of plants, which are the cam plants. If we look at a C3 plant, and we're just going to ignore this picture over here, but I just want to focus on a C3 plant for a second. I told you guys before, this is important, this is something to write down. Most of the plants we have in this part of the world, northeastern Ohio, especially trees, are going to be C3 plants. There are a few C4 grass-type plants out there. Crabgrass is a C4 plant, for example, which you find later in August and September when it's hot and dry. But most of our plants are C3 plants, and they're going to do both the light reactions and dark reactions in all of these mesophyll cells. Light and dark reactions happen in both of these groups of cells. This plant does have a vein. This plant does have bundle sheath cells, but they are not at all involved in photosynthesis. All right, C3 plants, all the photosynthesis stuff happens out here in the green cells. All right, so that's a C3 plant. If we look at a C4 plant, they are very different. And again, I want to ignore all this stuff over here and I want to focus on the picture. All right, in a C4 plant, we're going to have the light reactions happening out in the mesophyll. The dark reactions are going to happen in these bundle sheath cells. So if you'll notice, if we go back a slide here, these bundle sheath cells are brown, and what that indicates is they're not involved in photosynthesis. These bundle sheath cells are green, which means they are involved in photosynthesis. Okay, so out here in the mesophyll, we have the light reactions or the light dependent reactions happening. In the bundle sheath cells, this is where the light independent reactions happen. This is where the dark reactions occur. This is where the Calvin cycle happens. This is dark reactions. This is light independent reactions out here in the bundle sheath cells. Again, the idea here is by doing the Calvin cycle here, we are able to prevent rubisco from coming into contact with oxygen, thereby preventing photorespiration. All right, the last group of plants that we're going to look at, specialized plants that do photosynthesis in hot, dry places, are the cam plants. And cam plants have a very different strategy for doing photosynthesis. What they're going to do is they're going to open up their stomata only at night. So picture a desert. If you've ever been in a desert, great. If you haven't, picture it. I'll tell you what it's like. All right, during the day, hot and dry, not a big surprise. At night, cold, very cold, even down in the 40s or even high 30s at night in a desert, even in the middle of summer, it's cold. Plants can open up their stomata. They can dump whatever O2 they've built up that day. They can breathe in a bunch of CO2 at night, and they don't have to worry about drying out because it's not as hot, and so evaporation out of the leaves doesn't happen as much. All right, so what happens at night in a cam plant effectively is like those plants taking a great big gulp of air in, CO2, and a great big exhale of air out in the form of O2. All right, my dog's going to read me the lecture in this case as well. These plants, these cam plants, still use PEP carboxylase. They still use PEP. They still fix CO2 like a C4 plant does. The only difference is that they're going to open up their stomata at different times and close their stomata at different times from a typical kind of a plant. So what they're doing is they're actually breathing in that CO2 at night. They're storing it in their vacuoles. They have a type of vacuole which stores a substance called crassuleic acid. All right, so CAM stands for crassuleic acid metabolism. They breathe in CO2 at night, they store it as an acid, and then the next day they use that acid to produce CO2. So during the day, their stomata close. They have this huge amount of CO2 stored up inside the cells, and they very gradually begin to release CO2 from that acid, thereby allowing them to do their Calvin cycle. So what they're able to do is to have this CO2 stored up in the leaves in huge, huge quantities, so that even though during the day the stomata are closed, even though during the day O2 is building up, they still have so much CO2 around that it doesn't interfere with the Calvin cycle, and there is relatively little photorespiration. Okay, so cam plants, a little bit different. They do their breathing at night, they hold their breath during the day, they dump O2 at night, they breathe in CO2 at night, and then they use that CO2 all the next day. All right, so just to kind of compare these three pathways, again, just to reiterate, all these plants use the Calvin cycle, they just do it at different times or in different places. Right? C4 and CAM still use C3. They still use rubisco to fix CO2 onto RUBP to produce PGA, which then gets turned into G3P by the ATP and NADPH coming from the light reactions. They still funnel off 2 G3Ps to make glucose. They still recycle 10 G3Ps back to make the Calvin cycle repeat again. All that same stuff happens. They just do it in different places for a C4 plant or at different times kind of for a CAM plant. And so it's just a way to minimize problems associated with high temperatures, low levels of moisture in very dry environments. All right, so this picture again is a comparison out of your book. It shows you where plants live, shows you percent of plant species. I kind of underestimated a little bit before. It's more like 95%. Cam plants are 3 to 4%. C4 is relatively uncommon. It's only about 1% because the reactions take more energy out of the plants that do it. But again, the idea here, all variations in the same theme, all different evolutionary solutions to the same problem, and so plants have come up with that sort of a solution. Okay, so with that, I'm going to end our chapter here on photosynthesis and post this last lecture. If you have any questions at all, as always, email me, and I will try to answer them as best I can. Obviously, you can ask me in class as well, and I will try to clarify as best I can. All right.